Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Krysten Jansen, online fitness coach for the Natty Hour. Today I just wanted to do a sit down video and chat with you all about some considerations I think a lot of people need to look into before they decide to compete in the sport of bodybuilding. The reason why I wanted to discuss this today was because actually Kyle and I just recently announced that we are going to be hosting a bodybuilding show here in Kelowna through the WMBF June 2021. This is something that we are really excited about. We announced it a couple weeks ago now, I guess, on our Instagram pages, and we've been getting a lot of really good feedback, a lot of support. Just like what we expected, I've always seen a really high demand for the sport of natural bodybuilding here, and I'm very passionate about natural bodybuilding. It's something that I want to help grow, and I want to show people that they can look amazing and change their physiques and step on stage without having to use performance enhancing drugs. Not that I have anything against that, but I think a lot of people, they resort to that method before realizing their full potential, and I think that that's really important before you make that decision for yourself. So I'm very passionate about natural bodybuilding, so I'm really excited to bring the sport of natural bodybuilding here to Kelowna. Kelowna needs it. But because of that, I've had a lot of people inquire about bodybuilding. I've had a lot of people inquire about coaching and everything like that. So I thought that it would be really important to just discuss today some things that I don't think a lot of people consider when they jump into a bodybuilding show. They just jump in thinking that it's going to be a piece of cake and it's super easy, because typically all the people see is what it's like to be on stage. It looks super glamorous. It is very popularized right now on social media, but not a lot of people are talking about the risks involved, because this is a sport. Despite what some people think, there are risks involved when it comes to any type of sport. Just like when you are going to be a football player, basketball player, a soccer player, there's risks involved in regards to knee injuries, shoulder injuries, back injuries, all types of injuries. It's the exact same thing when it comes to bodybuilding. So we're going to discuss some things that not a lot of people think of today. So I think the first thing that you need to ask yourself is whether or not you are actually ready to compete. So to dive deeper into that, like, what's your experience with resistance training? A lot of people think that after about 6 months that they've given themselves enough time to put on a good amount of muscle in order to compete, which isn't always the case. 6 months really isn't a lot of time, and I'm not going to go into the different requirements for different categories, but there is a level of muscle definition that is required for all categories. So if you are thinking about competing in bikini, for example, you do still need some muscle definition. So as you go up in the different categories, the more muscle definition that you need. So I would argue that over just a 6-month period of actual weightlifting in the gym isn't an adequate amount of time for you to put on the necessary muscle mass that you need to look good. I'm not saying that you don't look good, and I'm not saying that you need to be super jacked or anything like that. All I'm saying is that when you go to compete, it is typically over about a 14 to 30 week period, especially because I'm relating this back to natural bodybuilding. Dieting down for a show within the typical 12-week period is basically non-existent. I take about 20 weeks. My next bodybuilding prep is probably going to take me about 30 weeks, because the more you actually go to diet down, the harder it does get over time, requiring more time to actually get shredded for a show. So it is a long process, and within that process, it is a full-time job. It's not like when you go to play basketball, you go to practice and you go to play the game and you go home and you enjoy the rest of your life, where you can still visit with your friends and eat and do all the things that you normally do. When you are prepping for a bodybuilding show, it is a full-time gig. You need to focus on your nutrition, which is obviously all day long that you're needing to focus on that. Your sleep, your water, your training, making sure that you don't overconsume calories, making sure that you are on track with your nutrition throughout those entire 30 weeks that you were dieting down for a show. So it takes a long time to get you ready to look perfect, basically, on stage. So because of that, you have the potential to look amazing. Within 6 months, you're still gonna look amazing, but you have the opportunity to look even better if you put another 6 months into your building season, where you're focusing on building enough muscle mass to look your best on stage. All I'm saying is it's a big investment, so you might as well enter into a prep when you feel completely ready with your physique and how you are looking. And I would argue within just a 6-month period, that's not a lot of time to put on the necessary amount of muscle mass that you need to be competitive and for you you to actually feel your 100% best on stage. Next thing to consider when you are asking yourself the question, are you actually ready to step on stage? Right now, before you're even dieting down for a show, how many calories are you consuming? This is for women mostly. Men are doing a little bit better of a job at this, where they aren't under-eating, unintentionally under-eating, whereas a lot of women are. We think that we're not dieting right now because we're not working with a coach or we're not really paying attention to our nutrition, but what a lot of us don't realize is a lot of the time we are unintentionally dieting, where our calories are really low right now. It's a big problem with women, and I don't know where it stems from. So this is just in regards to bodybuilding. That's a completely separate issue, but I'm just saying that this typically happens with a lot of women. So before you even prep down for a show, if you are eating, say, 1,200 calories right now, and in 2 months you're like, I think I want to step on the stage for next October. If you are eating 1,200 calories right now, and you aren't losing weight, that means that your maintenance calories are 1,200 calories. What I mean by that is that your body has adapted to the point where it needs to consume 1,200 calories just to maintain weight. So in order to lose weight, you need to be in a caloric deficit. So if right now you're eating 1,200 calories and you want to go diet down for a show, that means you're going to have to eat even less calories in order to lose the weight that is necessary to get you shredded for a show. What typically happens is our body adapts to the caloric adjustments. So when that happens, your body ends up hitting a plateau. And like I said previously, you are dieting over typically about a 30-week period. So if you're eating 1,200 calories, we make, say, like about a 500 calorie adjustment, because we have to be aggressive with caloric adjustments. At a certain point, say maybe within 6 weeks, 8 weeks of your dieting phase, out of those 30 weeks, you're going to hit another plateau, meaning we have to cut calories again by approximately 500 calories just to drive that caloric deficit, so you're actually losing fat. Well, at that point, if you do the math, you're basically running out of food. You don't have any food left over, and if you're only 8 weeks in, you have like 22 weeks left to get shredded for your show. Let me tell you something, ladies, mostly ladies, some guys do this too, but let me tell you, anyone who is watching, who is getting something out of this, who is actually doing this right now, you are going to suffer. You're going to suffer, and it's not going to be fun. Your cardio is probably going to be through the roof because your coach isn't going to be able to cut any more calories because there's nothing to cut from, and they don't want to kill you because at the end of the day, we still need food to survive. We still have to eat and perform in the gym as best as we can. So you're going to suffer, and it's going to be miserable, and it's going to put such a bad taste in your mouth when it comes to competing. Say you do make it through those 30 weeks doing it this way. Most people don't. They're going to quit because basically you're going to suffer to the point where you can't take it anymore. If you do make it those 30 weeks, what's going to happen after that show? You are going to binge because your hormones are going to be so out of whack, they're going to be so insane that you're not going to be able to actually control your hunger. And this is a common adaptation that occurs for people who are dieting at a more healthy amount of calories. They still experience these adaptations I'm describing here. You are going to be so out of control that you are going to overshoot the amount of body weight that you gain after you are done the dieting phase, because it's so difficult to control your hunger. The biggest thing when you are competing is to eliminate as much unnecessary suffering as possible. Like I said, there is always going to be some level of risk. There's always going to be a little bit of suffering that you have to endure when you are competing, but there's no point in adding in any unnecessary suffering that you don't have to actually go through. So in reverse, say you are actually at a point right now where you are consuming 2,000 calories or 2,200 calories, you can see how if you decide to diet down for a 30-week period, how that gives you so much more wiggle room to actually diet down to. So if it is over a 30-week period, you might end the 30-week period at the point where you are consuming those 1,200 calories that a lot of people are using as their starting point calories. Having that goal in mind where you are starting out with a higher amount of calories, it's really just going to help eliminate that unnecessary suffering that I was talking about. This is why it's so important to consider this right now before you actually start competing. So say you want to actually diet down for the show in 2021. Now's your time, now's your opportunity throughout the entire year of 2020 to make sure that you are prioritizing your strength so that you are adding as much muscle mass as possible and that you are consuming your food at an adequate rate, so that way your metabolic capacity is at a healthy starting point. So when you actually go to diet down for a show, you are not going to be experiencing any unnecessary suffering. This is why I require all of my athletes to work with me in the off season at a minimum of at least 4 months prior to them actually starting the dieting phase. I would love it to be about an 8-month period, but I totally understand that it's expensive, which is another point we will get to shortly here, but it's an expensive sport. So if I can at least work with people to get their metabolism, their metabolic rate, so their starting point calories are at a much higher amount, at least 4 months is definitely required versus people just coming to me right now saying, hey, I want to do a show in March. Okay, the next thing that you need to ask yourself, the most important question you need to ask yourself is, how's your mental health? You have to be so honest with yourself, because even those who are at their best and have such a strong mindset, they get messed up from competing. So let me explain why. We live in a world right now where social media is around us all the time. So we have the luxury as competitors to go onto social media and see what we're up against. What a lot of people forget is that social media and photos that are shared on social media can be easily manipulated to make it seem like they look like something else than what they actually do in real life. Yet we forget that, and we tend to still scroll through social media, going through the hashtags of the competition we're about to compete at, and we go look at our competitors. Ultimately, what is that going to do? It's going to bring us down. It's going to make us feel inadequate. Comparison is the thief of joy, and that is so true, and that holds strong here when it comes to competing in bodybuilding. Yes, you're going to be up against other people on stage, being compared against, and you're basically told whether you look good or not. If you get caught up in this, it's so easy to feel inadequate. At the end of the day, you cannot control what other people look like. It's not like another sport where you have a defense. You don't have that when it comes to bodybuilding. So even though you have other people you are technically competing against, it is you versus you on that stage. So you have to get out of this comparison mode. It is going to completely ruin the fun. It's going to ruin the process of prep, because people are manipulating things to look different on social media, which whatever. That's another issue that we won't discuss today. But if you get caught up in comparing yourself to these people who don't actually look that way, and if they do, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, this is about you. This is about you bringing your best package and you feeling at your best when you step up on that stage. And then as well too, if you are honest with yourself, you answer the question for yourself and you're like, yeah, you know what, I'm pretty mentally fit. I feel pretty confident that I'm going to be okay with not comparing myself. I'm going to be okay with being told that maybe my body's not good enough, because I am happy and 100% secure with how I look. It's easy to say that right now, and this is what I mean when I say I've seen people who are extremely mentally fit still suffer and really struggle with this side of competing. And the reason for that is when you are in a dieting phase, when you are consuming significant low amounts of food, your hormones are all out of whack. They call it prep brain. If anyone's who's competed before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You don't think clearly when you aren't actually eating the adequate amount of food that you need to for your body to function properly. So it's not even something that psychologically you can fully control. To some degree, yes, but there is some physiological aspects that are going on in regards to how your mindset is going to operate when you are dieting down for a show. So you need to be okay with that. You need to realize that you're not going to always be 100% rational. So that's really important to remember as well. And then last consideration when it comes to you answering the question for yourself, how are you mentally? To dive a little bit deeper, you need to ask yourself, how is your relationship with food and how is your relationship with your body? If the answer to these questions is not good, I promise you this, that competing is not going to make these issues go away. A lot of people think that if they jump into a show, it'll help fix their eating disorder. It'll help fix their body image issues. And in my experience, I have yet to see this be the case for any person, for any athlete out there. If anything, it actually amplifies these issues. Some people, if they aren't careful with answering these questions honestly for themselves, it can actually develop these issues. So if you didn't have body image issues before, if you aren't careful, if you aren't strong enough, if you aren't self-aware enough, that's a better word, it can actually create these issues that you've never had before. So if you already have these issues, I promise you competing is not the answer. I really recommend trying to find a different sport that's going to help you feel more empowered, such as powerlifting, such as strongman, running a marathon. Things that aren't body image focused is really going to help you fulfill that empowerment that you are searching for. Bodybuilding isn't the answer. Maybe at a later date, when you do feel much more secure in your body, when you do have a better relationship with food, that might be a better time to step on stage. But when these issues are already at the surface, I promise you competing is not the answer. It's not the sport for you at this time. All right, next question for yourself is, how are your finances? This is an expensive sport. It's really expensive. You know, you have your coaching costs, you have your entry fee, you have your tan, you have your makeup, you have your hair, you have your nails, you have your suit. Ladies, we have our heels. It's very expensive when it comes to the sport. So you have to really consider if it's something that you can afford, do some budgeting just to make sure that you are in a good position to afford it, because what ends up happening is a lot of people will cheap out on coaching, unfortunately, and unless you are a coach yourself, I really don't recommend that would be the first expense that you forego if you can't afford it. This is a very strategic sport and it can be very dangerous, so making sure that you have a professional who can help you to make sure that you're being safe is really important. And it's very difficult for us to be objective with our own results. This is why I'm a coach myself, and I have a coach who preps me down for a bodybuilding show, just because I can't be objective with myself, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's why I have someone to help me out to make sure I'm on point as well too. Like I said, our mental capacity starts to go down, so we aren't always as rational as we normally are if we were at a higher amount of food. So yes, I need a third person objectively looking out for me to make sure that I am doing things properly and adequately. Okay, so next thing to consider is finding a coach that works for you. It's so important to make sure that your deciding factors when you are hiring a coach is not just strictly based on how shredded they are. It's not just strictly based on their clientele roster. I think it's really important for you to interview your coach and get a full understanding of how the prep process actually works. There's not one way to do things. Just because they do something doesn't mean that it's wrong, but it might not work for you and your lifestyle and everything that you have going on. Some coaches, unfortunately, they have extreme peak week protocols. That might not be something that you need. That might not be something that's completely healthy. So it might be a little bit of a shock to you come a couple weeks out where you get your peak week protocol and you're like, holy cow, I'm supposed to drink like this much water or cut for 2 days or do all these weird things that a lot of people end up doing as a way to scramble to get you ready for a show. It's very important to make sure that you have a full understanding and you are fully comfortable with the protocols in place. Okay, last consideration. I know this video is long, but I hope those who are considering competing are taking something out of this. Last consideration is, what do you do after the competition? Now the competition is over. You spent the last 30 weeks busting your ass to look friggin' amazing on stage. It took a long time to get there, to look shredded and to look at your absolute best where you just feel amazing. Let me tell you something that not a lot of people say. It takes about 2 days for that to go away. It goes away like that. It's so instant, and it is one of, excuse my French here, it is one of the biggest mind fucks that you will ever go through. You just spend 30 weeks getting your body ready for this one day, for it to all be gone within 2 days. It is so challenging. And for those who don't expect that to happen, it can be very detrimental. The post-show process is the most important part. If you aren't careful, like I said at the beginning of the video, your hormones are so out of whack that you don't know when you are actually full, because mentally your mind and your hormones are telling you that you can eat more even though you're physically bloated, but mentally you just can't stop eating. That's something that you don't understand until you actually go through it. But being prepared for that really helps avoid that from happening. All of it goes away within 2 days. And I think understanding that and being prepared for that is going to help you accept that much better. It's going to happen. At the end of the day, how we look on stage, that shredded leanness look, it's not healthy. It's not sustainable, especially for us women. We have been evolved to make babies, and in order to do that, we need fat on us. Our bodies are going to fight against us to get you back to normalcy as quickly as possible. So it's important to remember that and to be okay with that. Yes, mentally, it's going to be very challenging. You need to accept that. But if you implement appropriate practices in place, you can still maintain a level of leanness, not as lean, but a level of leanness where you are still at a healthy body fat percentage. So by doing this, you have 2 ways of doing it. You can implement a reverse diet, or you can implement a recovery diet. I have done both for myself. I find that a recovery diet works much better for me. So I'll quickly break down what both of of these are. A reverse diet is basically where you slowly add calories back in over a period of time in order to minimize the amount of fat regain. Like I said, fat regain is totally normal and it is necessary after the dieting phase. It takes a lot longer with this process to get back to that normalcy, so mentally it can be a little bit draining. It takes a lot longer for your hormones to normalize, so it can kind of feel like the dieting phase is lasting a lot longer. The recovery diet is a little bit more aggressive. So basically what you do is you bring your calories back up to a maintenance level and then you slowly increase your calories from there. I found that by bringing my calories up to maintenance level at a much quicker rate allowed me to feel normal again, much quicker. The drawback with this though is you do see fat regain at a quicker rate. So you have to ask yourself and understand yourself, if seeing the scale go up very quickly is going to scare you, then the recovery diet might not be the best option for you. But if you do revert to implementing the reverse diet, it is going to take a lot longer to feel normal again. So it's kind of hard to know which option is going to be best for you. You might find that halfway through a reverse diet, you're like, hey, screw it, I'm done. I need to eat more food. I need to feel normal again. Some women, we end up actually losing our periods, so eating more food and getting up to a higher amount of calories and fat intake really helps us normalize our hormones at a quicker rate so we can get things feeling normal again. That's just going to kind of depend on you, but if you are smart with it, you still have to implement a process of tracking your food. Essentially, you're still dieting while eating more food, and it's very difficult to actually stay disciplined with that because the show is over now. The goal is gone and you have nothing that you're working towards now. So it's really important that you set a new goal right away. As soon as the show's over, as soon as you step off of stage, you have to set a new goal. So whether that be you're going to compete in a powerlifting meet, maybe you have a wedding that is coming up, maybe you're going on a vacation or a photo shoot, whatever it is, set a new goal for yourself so that way you have something new to work towards, so that way it helps you stay motivated and stay disciplined with the reverse dieting phase. All right, well, that's it. I know this was super long, but I hope you guys found this helpful. If you need me to clarify anything that I discussed today, feel free to send me a comment down below, or you can email me at thenattyhour@gmail.com. Check out our website, www.thenattyhour.com, and thank you all so much for watching. If you know anybody who is planning to compete, please make sure that you share this video. These things that I discussed today are very important for a lot of people to understand prior to actually competing. Thanks again, you guys. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.